Oh gosh, look at the crowd.
Come this way.
Those who spread goodness radiate happiness to everyone around them. Introducing LOLC Finance Credit Cards. Fuel the goodness in you.
Welcome to LMDtv. I'm Ashwini Vethakan, and joining us this week on Talking Business is the co-founder of Sysco LABS, Shanil Fernando. Thank you for joining us on the show this evening, Shanil. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Ashwini, for having me on the show. Appreciate being here.
Shanil, in which way is this technology dominating the world in the context of the pandemic?
Great question, Ashwini. Let me answer this in a couple of ways. So if you look at digital transformation was happening anyway pre-pandemic, right? So people were buying things more online, the importance of digital journeys, the importance of your workforce being digital, your technologies that support your businesses being transformed to digital. This entire thing is called digital transformation, and that was happening anyway. And you did see companies that got significantly disrupted when they didn't do that, right? So prime example is a company like Netflix that had disruption in companies like Blockbuster, right? So this digital transformation, both in a very disruptive way as well as in a more incremental transformational way, was happening. And then you saw typical industries doing it in a much more incremental fashion, right? Going online, providing digital journeys and so on. What the pandemic did was really accelerate this journey both companies and industries were taking, right? And the reason for that is because of the lack of physical access to goods and services they were providing before. So I'll give you a few examples. If you look at, you have to look at it in two aspects. One is more commerce happening online, which is online retail, buying online, services being provided online. And number two is the entire collaboration happening, more collaboration happening online, both in terms of work collaboration, social collaboration, as well as learning collaboration, right? So these are the two pillars that really got exploded and accelerated through the pandemic, and you're seeing this across the board, right? So if you look at a platform like Google Classrooms, pre-pandemic, you were looking at about 40 million users. But during the pandemic, there were a lot more people getting online. There's a lot more education happening online, because in fact, in some cases, the only way to continue education, you have over 150 million users on that platform right now. So it's the same with other collaboration tools like Microsoft Teams, similar numbers. And again, if you look at products and services, there's an absolute explosion on e-commerce trading, both for retail and other products and services. A great example is in Sri Lanka, a telemarketing product called ODOC that provides video-based medical consultations. And just during the pandemic, you saw an increase of up to 400% in their user base. The same is to be said for platforms like PickMe that became kind of the de facto platform people would go to buy stuff online, right? So what you're seeing here, digital banking, much significant penetration in digital banking that has happened because of the pandemic. What you're seeing here is actually a trend that was happening over a period of years. The digital transformation just got accelerated because of the pandemic, right? And the data that I have from McKinsey says something that would have typically taken 7 years has been accelerated because of the pandemic to less than few months.
So what are the top 2021 trends in the IT industry?
I'll answer this question in a slightly different way rather than talking about very specifics of, let's say, hot stuff like cryptocurrencies, AI, and so on. I'll answer this question in terms of 3 significant behavior patterns that have happened because of this pandemic, right? So, and the trends driving that, right? So if you look at it, I already mentioned a couple of them, but the 3 main things I want to reiterate is number 1, remote working, which has resulted in further globalization and talent everywhere. Number 2, because of this significant increase in the virtual space that we are in, the collaboration between data, machine learning, and AI has become even more important. And number 3, the significant role of the CTO or the CIO in your organization. Let me explain slightly on each of these 3 topics, right? Because of remote working, and remote working is something I strongly believe is going to be there for a long time. It may not be as remote as we have it today, but I strongly believe that need for physical presence in a work has really significantly diminished. People will be moving more towards a hybrid model. And as a result, what we've seen is there's access to global talent everywhere. My business in itself, we have really grown during this period because we have seen we don't need to be physically there at our offices, whether it's here or in the United States, to do our work. We can be based in Sri Lanka, we can be in the Philippines or India or any other country. And I have access to talent, not just in Sri Lanka, I have access to great talent in other global locations that I can tap into, right? So this virtual workplace, the virtual collaboration, the social collaboration has significantly increased, and there's talent access everywhere, right? So and companies that play in this space and have products and tools to help manage productivity, to help manage and understand the data of e-commerce that's happening, will have a huge play in the industry. The second one is obviously now when you have so many people in this virtual world, buying virtually, working virtually, learning virtually, the collaboration of data, machine learning, and AI will give significant insights to the organization as to how trade is performing, how my people are performing, and how our teams are performing, right? So technologies and products built in that space will go a long way. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, the digital journey, the digital roadmap your company has, the transformation that you are doing is significant, right? And as a result, the role of the CTO and CIO has moved from being a back office, keep the lights on function to be right in front of the customer. Because in the virtual world, the digital platform that you have, the digital journey that you provide is the primary selling point, and that's the experience that people buy into. So now that CTO's product and services become fundamentally important, that you provide an amazing journey that differentiates yourselves from your competition, right? And at the same time, more of your workforce is working remotely. They're working in a virtual world. You need to provide the platform, you need to provide the technologies, you need to provide the data for them to be productive. You need to make sure that they have the best tools to be productive. So the role of the CTO became very, very strategic in this period. And what you will see is that it's going to be playing a bigger and bigger role into the future. So those are the three things I think are going to be significant trends in IT in the short to medium term.
Given that the IT profession is being driven by a younger generation, what changes are trending in the workplace as a whole? And where do the problems, if any, lie?
So Ashwini, I really don't see this as a problem. As any organization and any industry, it's really important that you really cater to the demographics of your people, your employees, and your teams. You really need to understand them and really to be able to create a culture and environment that facilitates them to be the best in the workplace, right? So if you look at typical things that the younger generation really looks at, they want flexible time. They value work-life balance. They're much more liberal. They ask some very good questions, and really want to understand what are they doing? Why am I here? What's the impact I'm creating? And they also look for less formal workplaces, global experiences, and stuff like that.
And on that note, we'll be going in for a short break. Welcome back as we continue our conversation with the co-founder of Sysco LABS, Shanil Fernando. Shanil, looking at it from a macro perspective, we're falling short of Forex reserves and looking at debt to fill the gap. But that's not sustainable. What role do you think ICT can play here?
So I think IT has a significant role to play here. As an IT industry export perspective, we are just over $1 billion of exports a year right now. And the target is by 2023 to get to about $3 billion. I personally feel that's a good, target, but the way we are doing this, I don't think we will get there. We are doing it very, very incrementally. We need some, disruptive accelerations to make that happen. The good thing about the IT industry, especially in the export sector, is all dollars that come into this country are direct impact dollars, right? There is no importing that we need to do to add value addition. Every single dollar that comes in goes directly into the economy of this country. So it's a great industry for the country. And we also have amazing talent in this country. And, I have had team members working from here for international companies doing some amazing work, right? So we have the raw ingredients. But if you look at it, the industry is about 24 years old. We've been doing this predominantly private sector led. Government has been giving reasonable incentives like tax holidays, helping other areas like laws and stuff like that. But I'm a person, the Silicon Valley, and the way it works is someone who has a lot of experience in the Valley is when you have a concept that has worked really well, and we have a concept that has worked tremendously well over 20 years. We have some amazing companies here serving Fortune 500 companies, right? In the recent past, in the Sri Lanka forum, there were talks about attracting Fortune 500 companies to Sri Lanka. Great initiative, but we have been doing that in the past already through pure private sector focus. My company Sysco is a Fortune 100 company. It's my team that attracted them to Sri Lanka. No one else, right? So we have been doing this for a long period, right? So in a typical Valley model, when you have a proof of concept and a model that works, what you need to do is really take it to the next level. To take it to the next level, there has to be a significant focus. We need significant focus and resources to really blow it out. That has not happened in Sri Lanka, right? So for that to happen, you really need government intervention, significant government intervention, right? This hasn't happened for 20 years. And I hope it can happen, because if it does happen, this can be a $8-10 billion industry in a few years, right? So if you look at two comparable industries, the garment sector that has done really well and the tea sector, that are also two very important sectors for our exports. Both of them, the garment sector during the early periods with late President Mr. Premadasa, there were significant investments into that sector. There were private public investments that took place that built a lot of factories in Sri Lanka, and we are reaping a lot of rewards of that even today. And granted, the private sector companies came in and have really built some amazing global companies as a result. Very similar in the tea industry. The government took something that was already happening in a decent way and was able to really accelerate that. So Sri Lanka really needs the same thing in the IT industry. We've been doing this for 20 years. Private sector wise, we will continue to do well and grow incrementally. But if you want a significant acceleration, you know, think like a Silicon Valley company and bring in that big focus and investment to grow it. So one thing that I was really happy to see last week was Invest Sri Lanka, where we had some very good private sector people coming and talking about the technology industry, what's happening here, super representation from SLASCOM that's happening here, and going out to the world with what we have, asking them to come in with investments and so on. This needs to happen much more. Things like that need to happen 2 to 3 times a year. The Sri Lanka is not known for IT yet. We need to brand this much more. We need to take it out to the world much more for us to really make a massive impact. And I think if that happens, we can really transform this from a $1 billion industry plus to $8 to $9 billion industry, and that acceleration needs to happen.
Shanil, what is the scale of opportunity we're missing with the ICT sector in Sri Lanka? And in your opinion, what can we do to minimize this?
I think I answered this, Ashwini, slightly in the previous question. The scale is in the billions. We are in the $1.2, $1.3 billion range over 20 plus years of existence. If the right focus is there, we can make this a $10 billion industry. I think I want to mention 2 areas. One is I talked about growing the IT industry exports and how it's growing today, predominantly private sector led. You have great establishments like the SLASCOM that are working on a shoestring budget, but doing as much as they possibly can. And if you want to really accelerate those exports, you need the government intervention. And if you do that, you can really make this a much bigger $7-8 billion industry. The second thing I talked about at the earlier part of my conversation is about digitization, digital transactions, more digital transactions happening in Sri Lanka. I think mentioned this briefly, but let me reiterate because I think this is a very important, potentially untapped area, right? By increasing digital transactions in the country, promoting that digital transformation in our societies, and again, not only in Colombo, to taking this to the rural areas of the country, getting the entire population, a good 80-90% of our population using digital platforms to transact. What you would see is that people who have amazing products and services in rural areas starting to build social platforms to market those products and services. It could be in things like, it could be small things that are already happening, things like the tourism industry, but it could be an agriculture product, it could be a garment product, it could be a brand on textiles that we're building, it could be a batik artifact that is being built, right? By digitizing the society, they become much more technology savvy. They integrate into this virtual world, and before you know it, they'll be selling their products and services in this virtual world to international clients. And that's a very powerful situation to be, because when that happens, you're going to see a significant increase in our exports across the board, powered by digitization. So if you attack both these, right? Number one is the IT industry. It's in a growing state, but you can significantly accelerate it. And number two, digital transacting of our society, the entire country, you're going to see a massive growth in our export. And exports dollars is what we need right now, and this is the way to do it.
Well, that's all the time we have for this segment. Thank you for joining us on the show this evening, Shanil.
Thank you, Ashwini. Really appreciate it, and thanks for having me.
Coming up, we have a roundup of local news. Stay tuned.
You love the feeling of being renewed. To stay beautiful every single day. To breathe just like we do, because you are truly delicate, protecting the ones who've been with us through the years. With Sayalac Care, the only wood coating that truly protects you. Sayalac Wood Coatings from JAT.
Welcome back to the show, and here's a roundup of local news. The World Health Organization's representative to Sri Lanka commended the country for its exemplary healthcare system and assured the WHO's assistance in securing more COVID-19 vaccines for Sri Lanka. She hopes that the availability of vaccines will increase significantly by the third quarter of the year. The president of the Sri Lanka Veterinary Association mentioned that the coronavirus has been reported in animals since the 1960s and that there were no reports of the virus being directly transmitted from the source. He urged the public not to harass, abandon or chase away animals due to this fear. The Minister of Environment stated that a government-appointed committee of officials headed by the Deputy Treasury Secretary is to take over the purchase of gas for the state-owned Litro Gas Lanka for the next 6 months, turning down a request by the company to increase prices. The government is to fill around 100 acres in the Muthurajavala urban buffer zone to locate future liquefied natural gas-fired power plants planned by the Ceylon Electricity Board. An environmental impact assessment report reveals that the Sri Lanka Land Development Corporation will reclaim the land using 1.5 million cubic meters of offshore sand. Meanwhile, the Mudiyansage, Ambagaha and Mahabagaya canals are to be widened to prevent flooding. The Finance Ministry has granted more extensions to 2 multi-million-dollar mixed development projects to start commercial operations. One is an Indian investment in Golface and the other is a Chinese investment in R.A. Dimel Mawatha. The Minister of Finance has issued a gazette that allows a future 18 months of the Indian investment Avik International Hotels Lanka and an extension of 19 months for the Chinese-funded Welcome Hotels Lanka. The Sri Lanka Petroleum Private Tankers Owners Association, or the SLPPTOA, said that there would be a 15% price hike in line with the recent diesel price hike coming into effect from the 1st of July onwards. And that's all we have for this week. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching and stay safe.